Pencil Kings, 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 Pencil Kings.
All right, we're back. This is the Pencil Kings podcast. We've got an interesting thing today. We're changing things up a little bit with the podcast. We're trying out some different things, so bear with us. If you like the changes, definitely let me know. I feel like not enough people let me know what's up. But before we get into the podcast today, I want to tell you about a discount that we have going on, or a discount code. So we've got, I don't know if you've been to the site, but we've got these 3 challenges called the Figure Drawing Challenge, the Perspective Drawing Challenge, and the Shading Drawing Challenge. Now, these courses are awesome, and what we tried to do with them was take everything that you needed to know and pack it into a 30-day curriculum. So while there's tons, like, let's be honest, that learning to draw figures is sort of like a lifetime study, but we packed the most impactful things that you need to learn into a 30-day program, so at the end of those 30 days, you'll know everything that you need to know to have a whole lot of fun drawing characters. And so we did the same thing with shading, and we did the same thing with perspective. And if you go and you buy these before the end of May 2016, and you use the coupon code 20challenge, like the number 2 and then the number 0, and then challenge, so 20challenge, you can take 20% off of these courses. So just throwing that out there. I hope that you get it. If you want to learn about perspective, this course is killer. If you want to learn about shading, this is one of the things that we found that develops the artist's eye. So if you're just getting into art, people make some pretty amazing progress in the shading one. And if you're just into figures, we've had thousands of people go through the Figure Drawing Challenge now. And so it's an awesome course, and I would love to give you 20% off. So once again, the coupon code is 20challenge. Now, today we are talking to Nick Hagialas, and we're going to talk about a new endeavor that he's starting. And like I said before, we're changing up the model here. We were talking earlier, Nick had an idea, and I thought, why don't we challenge this live on the air and figure out a business case for it? Because I feel like as artists, often we're not the best business people right out of the gate. I think we can all agree with that. I'm sure there's some standout people here and there. Maybe Nick's one of them. Not sure. We'll find out. But I think we can all learn from this and become better, more self-sufficient business people by using our creative talents, and the world be a better place for it, because we won't be disgruntled working at whatever coffee shop or wherever we're working. We'll actually get to do the things that we want to do. So welcome to the call, Nick. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing pretty good, man. How are you?
Good. So tell me about a little bit more about the idea. Actually, you know what? Let's start off again with like how we normally do, and give people a 1-minute overview of kind of what you do right now, and then we'll get into this new thing that you have going on.
Sure. So a quick overview. I've always wanted to be an artist. I ended up going to Penn State University and majored in fine arts with a focus in new media, which is like the digital aspect. I was working on like freelance projects. Like I wasn't getting paid or anything, and I just kind of stuck with that. Made contacts, went to conventions, blah blah blah. I did that for a couple years, and slowly kind of grew an audience, and people that I started meeting helped me out with new projects, new ideas, blah blah blah. And now I'm a working professional. I'm an art director on a trading card game and a video game that was just successfully funded on Kickstarter called Project Resurgence. And I'm also working on a comic book called Edge of Extinction. And besides
Awesome.
that, just working on some, random freelance stuff.
Well, first off, congrats on the Kickstarter. I know it's not...
Thank you.
It's not like a slam dunk, those Kickstarters. You see people and they're like, they hit it out of the park, but they're just not always like that. So big congrats on hitting your funding goal. I know it's not... it's easier said than done, right?
Definitely. Thankfully, with this one, we had kind of a Twitch celebrity that was on the team. So we already sort of had a following. We had like 40,000 people or something who already had heard about our project at least. So that definitely helped out a lot.
All right. So we covered what you're working on, but you're you got fired up. We talked a little bit before, and now you've got a new project. So why don't you tell us what that new project is and give us a sense of the kind of the scope of it and what it's going to be about. I feel like just before we get into that, I feel like a lot of people that are worried that if they tell their idea that people are going to steal it. I don't know if I've ever seen an idea get stolen. I've seen it at the sort of the Hollywood level where you get something like A Bug's Life comes out and Ants comes out at the same time. It's like, what's going on here? But at the sort of like the smaller individual level, I've never really seen someone's idea get copied because generally it's a ton of work to see anything get made. It's a ton of work and a ton of passion, especially with these creative projects. So hopefully, Nick, you're okay with sharing. But if there is something that you want to keep back, keep your cards a little close to your chest. I respect that. But I just wanted to throw that out there because I know a lot of people are worried that someone's going to steal their idea and so they don't tell anybody about it. But like, I would love for people to tell me about their big, crazy ideas because then I could help them turn it into reality, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I think I've seen a lot more ideas get modified, but I think I'm far enough along in this process that we should be able to launch this idea within the next week or two. And we put enough work into it that I feel comfortable, talking about it. I have no idea if it's going to be successful or not, but that's the hope. So yeah, we'll just see. So basically, where this started was, like I was saying, when I was at Penn State, I was working on this free project, and my art director at the time, it was a video game project, he invited me to go to this convention called IlluxCon in Pennsylvania, and I was already in Pennsylvania, so it was convenient. So I met up with all these other artists. I got to meet some really cool Magic the Gathering artists and art directors and blah, blah, blah. But the running joke of this whole thing was that I'm an art bro. I'm into sports. I like lifting. I like all the nerdy stuff too. I love video games and obviously drawing and whatever card games. But I'm kind of an art bro. So it started with that, and then when you and I were talking last time, Mitch, we were talking about self promotion and crowdfunding and all that kind of stuff, and we brought up Derek, who has been on this podcast before as well. And I thought to myself, I'm like, man, well, Derek is another art bro as well, and you don't really see too many of those. So I had this idea to come up with a YouTube channel called Art Bros, and essentially what it is a lifestyle channel that helps inspire other creatives. And the hope is also that it should be interesting for people that aren't necessarily in the art industry. It should just be one of those things that you pop onto YouTube and you're like, oh, here's two cool guys doing some fun stuff. I'm going to check it out, sort of thing. I found, well, both Derek and I have found every time somebody random comes up to us and we're just chatting it up, they're like, oh, so what do you guys do for a living? We're like, oh, we're freelance artists. We sit at home, we draw all day. They're like, that is awesome. So we thought, I mean, if a lot of people think it's cool, we might as well just, broadcast it and show people what it's like to be a freelance artist. And it's definitely fun. It's definitely difficult and takes a lot of work. But I think that's some of the interesting points we can take note of while we're filming is that, we do get to sit and draw all day, but it is a ton of work. But the reward is very, very great as well. So we've been filming for the past 2 weeks. We're in the process of editing some videos, and hopefully within the next week or two, we can release the first video and give everybody like a glimpse of, what this is supposed to be about.
Very cool. Now, before we go on, I gotta ask.
Sure.
I feel like I know what it means, but what does a bro mean to you? Because I feel like it's something that's internet culture, and as much as we believe that internet culture permeates everything, there's a lot that doesn't. Like if I said to my mom, I was like, oh, I'm hanging out with some bros today. She thinks I'm hanging out with my actual brother. And I just made a verbal slip and said bros instead of bro. So what is a bro?
So when I think of a bro, I mean, because I'm into lifting, I watch a lot of these fitness channels. I follow fitness people on YouTube. I think of like, a meathead that's carrying around like a jug of water. And obviously Derek and I aren't that extent. We're still, obviously in the nerd geek culture realm as well. But that's why it's art bros, because we have a bit of the different personalities. So I don't know if that necessarily explains it. It's kind of one of those things that You just know a bro when you see a bro.
You know a bro when you see a bro. I feel like I'm not a bro. I don't know. I'm just the geek part. Okay, so you're setting up this YouTube channel. I think it's a great idea. YouTube's an awesome place to be. There's a lot of people that want to become freelance artists. Now, what do you mean by that? It's a lifestyle channel?
So so a lifestyle channel is essentially people vlogging, like video logging their lives, video blogging, whatever. So whenever Derek and I are drawing at home, we're going to be videotaping ourselves drawing at home. When we go on a trip to the art museum together, we're going to be filming that. When we're walking around in Philly, we're going to be filming that. When we go and get wings and drink beer with our friends, we're going to be filming that. So that's essentially what a lifestyle channel is. There's some fitness guys that I follow on YouTube that kind of have a lifestyle channel. My girlfriend follows this couple that kind of like they have recorded every single day of their entire lives for like years. So you get to see like their child being born and all this crazy stuff. So we're not going to go overboard with it. We want to have a fine balance between it being the lifestyle channel aspect as well as the educational and inspirational part. And I think that's pretty unique, and I haven't seen anybody do it before. So I'm hoping that with our connections, we can make something of it pretty quickly after we release our first video.
Cool. So let's go from hope and see if we can turn this into something a little bit more concrete. Because I feel like for the people listening, that there's a lot of like we've all got these ideas, right? But sometimes it's hard to connect the idea to the money, and it's easy to go down the path of like let's just make it. It's an awesome idea. We'll figure out the money part later.
Yeah, definitely.
But eventually, like you hit a roadblock. There's like a lot of potential pitfalls with money, but not having like a plan going into it, you can totally do it and stumble through it and figure it out along the way. But what's your plan right now to so that this is not just an extra, let's say. How many hours a week do you think you would be putting into this just yourself? I mean, I'm guessing that Derek would kind of mirror your hours, but 5 hours a week, 10 hours a week?
So what the plan is I mean, since Derek moved nearby and we live next to each other, we're not planning on doing that much more work than what we already do because we've just happened to already be doing some pretty fun things on the weekend and some art related things. So it's just a matter of putting the camera in front of us, and the only extra work we have to do is the social media part and the editing of footage. So yeah, I'd say I don't know, maybe 5 hours a week for that kind of stuff. We're both super busy artists as it is, so we're trying to not have this interfere with our current projects or anything like that. And we also are hoping that it's a good way to promote not just ourselves but the things we're working on as well. So without sounding like I'm trying to be this mastermind schemer or anything like that, as far as money goes, YouTube isn't necessarily the best platform to have direct income from. You can make some money from ads and blah, 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 but that's not really the idea. For us, it's more a doorway to have more of a following, to get people interested in who we are, as well as interested in the projects we're working on, and it also opens a doorway for maybe lessons later on or mentorships and stuff like that we can potentially offer. We haven't sat down and had any concrete ideas about that yet because this is still sort of a huge science experiment, and we're just gonna go with the flow and turn the camera on wherever we are and see how this works out. So that's the plan.
Okay, so you're doing it. No, there's not a clear thing. I have heard of people making decent money. Like there's some that make amazing money on YouTube, but it's a lot of viewers. It's not something that just starts right away.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think about this.
It's more like an indirect reward based on the fact that you have fans that are following you, that are interested in you as a person. So whenever you release a new product, you can almost certainly count on that fan either not necessarily buying it, but just at least being interested in it or wanting to share it, that kind of thing. So that's sort of as far as self-promotion goes, that's what we're hoping for with this. We don't have like dollar signs in our eyes with this thing and we're like, oh, we're going to get super rich off this. We're looking more for a way to just share with people who we are, and hopefully that'll reap some sort of reward later on.
Oh, and I'm sure it will. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate here, not necessarily to pick on this idea or anything like that, but just so that for people listening who have ideas that they can use some of these same frameworks. So
Yeah.
let's say do you have a time frame where you feel like this should pay off for you, like in some way, some like kind of tangible way, like, oh, you got a project that you wouldn't have got before or something like that. Whereas if you didn't get anything by, let's say like 6 months, you're just like, yeah, no more. Like I spent 5 hours a week. That was 5 hours I could have just spent, doing other things. Is there a time limit like that?
Well, I've sort of already been testing it as far as upping my social media presence, and Derek has as well. We're sort of preparing for how to do this once we actually release content, and we've already seen like it's almost instantaneous, honestly. So if I'm linking something directly to Kickstarter, we see maybe we make 1,000 impressions and we get 5 people to help fund our Kickstarter. So it's I don't know. It honestly comes down to how many views we're gonna have. We have a general goal of where we'd like things to be, like in a week, in a month, in 6 months. But I honestly, it's hard to guess until you at least release one thing. So I know that's not much help, but
No, but I just really wanted to ask the question. So if somebody's in a similar position, that they could give themselves an idea. It's like, okay, well, if I was going to work for somebody, like what would I want to get paid per hour? So if you're doing 5 hours per week, then you say like, okay, well, the very lowest I would work is $20 an hour. I know that's not what people are worth, but maybe like that's just a number that it would be different for each individual person. But you choose that number, and so you're like, okay, so that's about $100 per week. Let's just say in this perfect world that there's 4 weeks in every month, so that's $400 per month. And then if I say that at the end of 6 months, that's my kind of cutoff point where I either go forward or I can it. And so then you could say like, okay, well, $400 a month, 6 months, that's $2,400 if my math's correct. So that's sort of like what it's costing you in real dollars to go down this path. And I think that it's interesting to look at things this way, because all of a sudden it takes sort of like the passion and the emotion, and it becomes very like cold. It's like very black and white. Like, oh, would you rather have $2,400 guaranteed in your pocket or doing this project? And if you look at it through that lens, all of a sudden it's like, I don't know, maybe there's something else I could be doing, that has a potentially bigger payoff.
Yeah, I definitely agree. With this, it's I don't know, it doesn't necessarily feel like work, like you're working for somebody, as opposed to, I don't know, trying to get more of a social media presence. Because I mean, either way, artists all the time are like, oh, I'm going to post my stuff to Instagram, to Facebook, and it's hard to necessarily feel out like, okay, I'm spending already 2 hours a week just posting stuff to Facebook. It's just something you do. You're not necessarily thinking about how much time over money you're losing, because you know that if you leave a long enough legacy, somebody's going to end up finding one of your pictures eventually and going to like it and want to hire you for work. So I understand what you're saying, where it's like, I totally understand what you're saying, because I'm more of the type of person that is very planned and calculated. But this is a good experience for me personally, to try to let loose a little bit more and be more spontaneous with my life. And I think that in itself is worth more at the moment than any sort of monetary value. So like
I like
said,
that.
it's more of just a big experiment for me at this time in my life. I figured, if I try to do this 5 years from now, I might have, kids, or have payments on a house or something like that. Whereas right now, I'm working for myself. I live with my girlfriend. I'm working out of my apartment, this is the perfect time to do something like this. And I'm not necessarily thinking of how much money I'm going to make. I'm thinking about how much of an impact I'm going to make on people. So again, I don't know if that really answers your question, but that's just kind of where my mind is at with this thing.
It does, yeah. And like I tend to be more the opposite of you. So I'm more the free wielding, don't look at the bottom line, go for the passion, and it's often bit me in the butt. So that's why I'm bringing this stuff up. So
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear like the other side of the coin where you're like, well, usually I'm very calculated about this, but this is more of like this experiment. And I really like the way that you're looking at it, that you still have your day job, or like your way of bringing in income normally. So it's not like you're depending on, if this fails, it doesn't really change your reality from what it is right now. If it's successful, then it hopefully accelerates what's already working well, right?
Exactly. And I feel like people that are more in my position, this is the time you need to honestly wait for if you are planning on doing a passion project. Like if you are an artist, you should try to make a living off of your art, and then spend the extra time to do something fun that might help you out in the future, kind of thing. So that's just my 2 cents.
All right, cool. So we got that out of the way. There's not really a strategy. It sounds like it's like it's really an experiment, and you're just going to see where it goes. And then you had mentioned teaching or coaching as potential things, but you don't really know. And I guess you're just going to wait for people to tell you or ask you. It's like, hey, really like what you're doing, and then go that route.
Yeah, Derek and I both have connections to some pretty big YouTubers, like over 70,000 subscribers, like tens of thousands of views each video, and we've gotten some advice from them. And what we keep hearing is the best way to go about it is just see what ends up happening in your comments. That's why it's kind of hard to tell right now, because like you just sort of explained, you'll start to feel out who's viewing you, what kind of people, if they're male, female, that kind of thing. And you can't necessarily prepare for that. And a YouTube channel is one of those things that we could start with this idea, this Art Bros idea, and it could go more in the educational direction or more in the lifestyle channel direction, just depending on what people like. So that's why you never really know. But I've always wanted to do some sort of mentorship program or something like that. I feel, especially since I'm pretty young and I'm already art directing, it's kind of come a bit naturally to me. I can kind of see how to help people progress in their art and progress as far as making connections, like figuring out project ideas and stuff like that. So I think that's definitely going to be something that happens down the line with this channel.
All right. So the next thing I want to ask is partnerships. I've been through some partnerships before. It's always been a little tenuous. It always starts off on the right foot. Are you planning for something down the line? And again, I'm asking these questions more so to get you to think about it, but also like the people listening to think about, because there's often an idea, and I would say if you can do it yourself, see how far you can get. If you can hire your friend, hire them. It sounds like with your idea that you can't really hire a co-host because you're sort of like 50-50 in it. But I do know that there's things that you can do that would prevent it from getting really ugly down the road. If one of you decides like, hey, I don't want to do this, and the other person's like, well, I do. So what are you going to do in that situation? Have you thought about that?
Definitely. Yeah, I never jump into anything with anyone that I don't initially trust or haven't known for a long time. I feel like I've known Derek long enough that this should hopefully work out pretty smoothly. We're being responsible in that if we're putting money towards anything, we're kind of splitting it right now, and we're talking every step of the way. I don't think until we see once we see the first dollar come in, then we'll probably figure out some sort of contract just to save our asses later in case we I don't know, something bad happens. You know what I mean? It's better to be safe than sorry. But right now, because it's just an experiment, and because, like I said, it's just we're popping on the camera whenever we get the chance. There's nothing really to lose. So we're just kind of not really at that point yet where we need to worry about anything legal, like, with a lawyer or something like that, or contracts.
Gotcha. Well, because you haven't thought through this, I will put one idea in your head. You can look it up later. And again, for the people listening, and it's called a shotgun clause. And so how a shotgun clause works is that if you get to a point where you have a disagreement, and usually things start off just like you said, you're good friends, you've known each other for a while, and then you start to go down the path, and then something happens. Like, there was never a problem when there was no money, but as soon as there's money, all of a sudden there's a problem, or you have different ideologies, or someone has a kid and their situation changes. There's all these different things that can happen.
Yeah.
But what a shotgun clause does is it prevents the sale of the business from kind of just being in limbo, because it allows you to say, look, I want to continue in this business in this direction, and here's the price that I'm willing to offer you. So let's just say you offer the person $10,000. What happens then is that your partner has the first opportunity to buy you out at that same price if they want. So what this does, it's really smart, because what it does is prevents you from giving a lowball offer. Because if you're like, well, I really want to continue with this, but I'm going to give you $2,000, and then your partner's like, no way, I'm going to buy you out for $2,000, and our shotgun clause says that that's how this works. So here's your $2,000, and I own everything now. So it's a really simple structure that in the beginning, when you're friends and everything is good, like, you can just put this in place, and it makes that when it's time to part. And I've seen a few friends go through the same route, and it hasn't been the awesomest.
Yeah.
But it just prevents a lot of just bad situation, because somebody can just say, look, I want you out. Here's the price that I'm willing to pay to get you out. And the other person can either take it and be like, yeah, okay. Or they can say, like, no way, I'm going to buy you out. But because you gave a fair price, then you're willing to walk for that price as well. And you could say, okay, well, I got paid out, fine, and I can use that money and go and start something else or whatever. So that's the thing with partnerships. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about, and this comes from my own experience, is what are you guys going to do in order to stay consistent?
So yeah, that's definitely the big thing, especially advice from these YouTubers I was talking about. We're hoping to do 2 or 3 videos a week, and like I said, again, it's an experiment, and we started the experiment about 2 weeks ago, and since then we've been consistent, even just in filming. So, and that goes for both of us. Like, we both have the same amount of footage on each of our cameras. So, it's just a matter of, being disciplined and keeping it up. Obviously, if something gets in the way, that's one of those things that you need to tell your viewers, like, hey, I'm going to be doing this, or this is going on, so unfortunately we won't be able to do a video for the next couple days or a week or whatever. But it's just a lot of discipline. It's the same thing as being a freelance artist, though. Like, you need to be able to discipline yourself, wake up in the morning and get your work done without anybody telling you that you have to report to an office and get stuff done from 9 to 5. You just kind of know you got to do it.
I feel like it's different though than freelance, because with freelance, if you don't get your stuff done, you don't get paid, or you get fired and your reputation gets damaged. If you miss a YouTube video, some people might complain, but it didn't hurt your income. It didn't, no one was expecting that much anyway. No money was on the line.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of just up to Derek and I to see how passionate we are about it. I mean, if this is going well, we're going to want to be more consistent so that we're making a better impression on people. I'm really driven by, feedback and stuff like that. So I'm just kind of hoping at this point that if we do what we say we're going to deliver, then it should work out. So I've always been pretty good about being consistent, not to toot my own horn. So for me, it shouldn't hopefully be too big of a problem, but you never know.
Well, yeah, and the reason why I bring it up is it's so important, and it's one of the big mistakes that I had made in the past was that I got an awesome job, and then all of a sudden my web stuff I wasn't being consistent with it, and it all kind of just went to pot because I didn't have systems in place. And so,
Thankfully, we already have jobs where we sit on the computer all day anyway. So it's kind of like if we want to take a break from art for an hour to work on one of our videos, it's just right there in front of us. It's not like some people where I keep referencing these fitness guys, but it's because I watch a lot of their videos. You know, they have to go home and sit on their computer in order to work on their stuff. Do you see what I mean?
yeah,
We're kind of at a
definitely.
slightly higher advantage for what we're trying to do based on our current careers. So
That makes sense. All right. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time for me to just to not necessarily poke holes, but just to ask some questions that I think that for anybody listening who has a big project or something that you want to do it. Like I'm all for people doing creative things and getting past the fear and just seeing what happens. Because a lot of times you don't know and it could be really amazing.
yep,
But just there's some things if you think about it in the beginning can really it can really smooth things out. So I think if you go back and if you had a project like this and the same questions that I asked is like, what are you going to do about the money? How are you going to figure out what your people are going to want? How are you going to become consistent? What are you going to do about your partnership if things don't go so well? There might have been a couple other questions there as well. I'll let you go back and listen. But these are so important. And if you can get, really think about these and get some good answers to them, you should be in a pretty awesome place, which just sounds like, Nick, you've thought through most of them.
yeah, I've tried to. I feel like just from working on these other freelance projects and seeing which ones have failed and why they failed and why the ones I'm working on now are succeeding, that's been helping. And because I'm doing everything remotely, obviously, all of the success has to do with social media presence and getting the word out digitally. So I've already become sort of trained in how to get a virtual product, I guess, or whatever you want to call it, off the ground. So it's just like I keep saying, it's an experiment, and we'll see where it goes. I'm excited to start doing it and see what people think of it.
So is the channel up yet or not?
No, not yet.
Okay.
We have like
No problem. We're gonna have Derek back on shortly, and I'm sure he'll be talking about it. So once it's all ready to go, then we'll let him let everybody know
sure.
what it is.
Awesome.
All right. Well, Nick, before we wrap up, do you want to give a shout out to your website where people can find you online and look at some of the things you're working on and some of your personal work?
Sure. My website is actually nikhagialas.daportfolio.com. It's just like a generic DeviantArt portfolio. But honestly, if you want to follow me, my art Facebook page, Nick Hagialas Art, you just search it in Facebook. That's the best place to keep up with me and my projects. And if I can just like shamelessly plug what I'm working on right now, if you don't mind, Mitch.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so Project Resurgence is the video game project. Nectar Game Studios is the studio that's working on it. So if you guys search that, you can kind of see the updates of how that's going. And Edge of Extinction is the comic book I'm working on. We're doing a Kickstarter right now, and we're about 2/3 of the way funded, and we have about 8 days left. So if anybody's interested in cool science fiction comic books, go check out Edge of Extinction issue 4 Kickstarter, because you might be able to help us out and read something pretty cool.
All right, I've got one last question for you.
Sure.
Since you've been through the Kickstarter process a few times, as many people know, we record these episodes before they go live. So we're not recording it on the exact same day. So we got to do editing and align people's schedules. So I don't know if we're going to be able to get this episode out before your Kickstarter actually ends. However,
Sure.
let's say your Kickstarter has ended. What do you do? What can people do to support your project after the fact?
Just buy the comic and read the comic, honestly. Give us feedback on our Facebook and tell us if you liked it or not. And if you don't like it, tell us why. Any critique is a good critique as long as you're being honest. And that's invaluable for an indie project like this.
Awesome. Well, I think that's actually a great way to give back. And I'm always looking for ways that, the audience can give back to the creators that doesn't necessarily cost money. And I feel like, yes, you'd buy the comic, but just giving that feedback it's worth a lot. And it's worth the feedback does get read, and it's worthwhile to take the time to write it out and send those into the creators, and they appreciate it as long as it's not it's not, as long as it's not too negative, I feel like you can have critical feedback, but when it's just bashing, nobody likes to be bashed.
Constructive criticism is the best term to use, I'd say.
Yeah. All right, well, let's wrap up there. We'll have show notes for this, so if you want, you can go to pencilkings.com/podcast, and we'll have links to Nick's site and his Facebook page and the comic book and the video game that he's working on, as well as possibly the YouTube channel if it's up by the time we air this.
Definitely. And
just one last call out here. I want to also let you know about the drawing challenge that we have, and the coupon code again is 20challenge, and that'll give you 20% off of what I think are our best courses and some of the best courses on learning the fundamentals of art online. So you go to pencilkings.com, you can, if you go to resources, read down the menu, and you can see figure drawing challenge, perspective drawing challenge, and shading drawing challenge, and use 20challenge and get 20% off. So thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it. Thanks, Nick, and we'll be back next week.
Thanks for having me on, Nick.
Scope demands patience, skill, years of practice.
Ah, you talk like a fool. I would trade a century of practice for an ounce of inspiration.